Guys, I don't know this fella's name, but put this up. I'll show it in a minute. Oh, you can see it up here. See that? That's his name. Let's get over here. He posted that this morning. It's very appropriate. It says the Second Amendment has been repealed. In Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, Indiana, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Red flag laws there allow people to report a person of being a danger to themselves or other. The police will confiscate their guns of the accused without investigation. The accused must go to court and prove that they are not a risk, which takes over a year. Let me zoom this in. Okay. The accused must go to court and prove that they are not at risk. It could take over a year. They are guilty until proven innocent. The government is just testing the water. If this passes nationwide, more aggressive gun confiscation laws will be passed until all the guns are entirely illegal. We need to share this before it gets that far. Share this message. I'm sorry. We need to end this before it gets that far. Share this message. Back us up just a hair. There's a reason I put that up there, people. You know, this thing about mental illness, that's a new thing that they've been wanting to pass for a long time. They kind of shuffled it around and talked about it, but they didn't go too far into depth. But, with all this stuff happening at schools and stuff, the most popular proposed methods of gun control has been restrictions on gun ownership. Instead of banning the doctors from prescribing those psychiatric drugs, which cause these kids to go nuts, they go after the guns. It's just a vehicle or a platform to get your firearms. Now, when you start banning a certain group or a class, you are effectively turning them into second-class citizens. In the case of mental illness, this classification is so vague and open to interpretation that it could be applied to over half of the population depending on the criteria that you use. Mental illness is hard to identify since there's no kind of official test for most conditions. Most people are diagnosed according to the subjective opinions of doctors that observe them. In the most severe conditions like schizophrenia, it is even difficult to identify and also misdiagnosed. Psychiatric drugs are another problem. It could get you marked by the government as mentally unstable. But a classification like this would also allow large portions of the U.S. population to be disarmed. According to a 1916 survey by the Internal Medicine, more than 1 in 6 Americans are on some kind of psychiatric drug. This is not to mention the large number of people who report symptoms of depression or anxiety and don't take medicine. Like if you lose your child, you're kind of depressed and you're out of sorts. But they shouldn't be able to take your firearms for it. Policy like this can allow the government to disarm dissidents and political enemies as psychiatry becomes more influential during the middle of the 20th century. Rulers around the world began to use mental illness as an excuse to lock up anybody who might disagree with them. The Soviet regime became notorious for this practice by labeling all political dissidents as mentally ill, so they could be locked away and no threat to their establishment. The American history will show you that the United States had a history of slapping unruly citizens with a mark of mental illness. President Franklin Roosevelt famously called his detractors the lunatic fringe, and this type of attitude towards activists has carried on in the halls of government to this day. Oh, jeez. The Dictionary of Mental Illness, known as DSM-5, published by the American Psychiatric Association. There's actually a condition listed for people who have a problem with authority. It's called oppositional defiant disorder. It's a name that psychiatrists made up to identify children who won't do what they are told. And now even adults are being diagnosed with this condition as well. A study in 2017, they set out to determine whether or not in conspiracy theories was a form of mental illness. As expected, they found the exact answer they were looking for. People who don't trust government and mainstream media are crazy and suffering from something called illusionary pattern perception. Wow. Man, wow. Geez, you got doctors out there practicing medicine, and that's what they're doing. They're practicing. They don't know how many times. Well, I'll give them this, and maybe that'll work, and maybe this will work, and I'll give them this now since that one didn't work. It's kind of like going and getting your car repaired. It's guesswork. Well, I'll put this part on. Well, that didn't work. I'll put another $300 into this, and then that didn't work. Eventually, they might get it right, but eventually you may end up with the same car that you had before. You cannot believe everything that these people come up with. Another thing is, to prevent mentally ill from owning firearms is a severe form of ableist discrimination. It also opens up the door for anyone to be classified as mentally ill. Now, if you look, people, back in, if you look at your Constitution, Amendment 9, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be controlled or should not be conspired to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Disparage means to connect unequally, or to match unsuitably, or to discredit one's persons or property. In other words, they're putting you into a separate class. Oh, you don't think we don't have different classes? Oh, yeah. You know, there's the ones that want to be the dictator, and then you got all the other ones who are below them. You can't enforce something like this. This is way out of lines with the Constitution of the United States. They're taking away your rights, and you can't do that. You can't even legislate a right away. That's against the Constitution, and that's what these people are trying to do. All these shootings and stuff, if you look at Combine, Parkland, all these things, people had drug problems. They weren't firearm problems, they were drug problems. What are they going to do next? Ban cars because people have been killed with them? Or you can use them to have mass casualties by driving down the sidewalk and mowing people down? What's next, people? They use any excuse to justify staying in control and having more control over you. I knew eventually they'd get around to this mental illness thing. They got so many laws on the books now that are totally unconstitutional. It's wrong. Even like the so-called domestic violence bill. Now it says in the Constitution there's a thing called Bill of Attainder and ex post facto law. Ex post facto law means you cannot pass a law after a fact or a commission of a crime and lump people into it. And that's what they did with the domestic violence law in '96. It went all the way from '96 all the way back to Adam and Eve, and that is against the Constitution, and they let it stand. They also put damn things in the new laws that even if something that is found unconstitutional, ex post facto won't have nothing to do with the ones that aren't. That's not how it works. If anything is in conflict with the Constitution, that has to be declared null and void, and they've got to write that law over again. If any part of it's wrong, the whole bill is wrong. That's what it says in the Constitution. Don't let these people railroad us anymore. Don't let them use mental illness as a vehicle or a platform to take your rights away. Thanks for watching.